Around the world, lymphedema poses a severe health threat to many people. According to the data released by World Health Organization, there are 250 million people with lymphedema worldwide. Lymphedema is the 11th in the World Health Organization's ranking of common diseases and the 2nd in the disabling diseases. In China, lymphedema brings misery to hundreds of thousands of patients each year. Women with gynecological tumors, in particular, bear the double blow of cancer and lymphedema, suffering from physical and mental pains. However, medical institutions and society have paid little attention to lymphedema.
My mother is a lymphedema patient from Beijing. 4 years ago, she suffered from gynecological malignancy, and after a series of painful operations, radiation, therapy, chemotherapy, and biological immunotherapy, the cancer was cured. However, another nightmare was waiting right after it. One day she found that her abdomen and legs were swollen for unknown reasons, and after running through several hospitals in Beijing, she was diagnosed with lymphedema, a common afterpain of gynecological tumors. She had never heard of the condition before and hadn't received a single preventive tip from her hospitals where she had the operation before.
The patients in large cities are facing such difficulties, it is beyond our imagination what predicament women patients in less developed areas are facing. Miss Liu, who lives in Aurora Xinyi Province, was diagnosed with cervical cancer in 2015. After undergoing surgery, radiotherapy, and chemotherapy, her cancer was just under control. However, 2 months after surgery, her legs became unexpectedly swollen and painful. She did not seek medical treatment due to the lack of prevention knowledge and the heavy financial burden that surgical treatment had placed on her family. It was not until 5 years later that she learned it was lymphedema when she went to the hospital for an examination. Under such circumstances, Miss Liu had to quit from the original factory, endure the torture of illness, and do odd jobs to deal with the bread and butter issue while taking care of her young children.
Currently, there are nearly 20 million patients with lymphedema in China, with hundreds of thousands of new cases every year, and there is a trend of continuous increase. According to incomplete statistics, the incidence rate of lymphedema after breast cancer surgery in China is 20% to 30%, and the incidence rate of lymphedema after gynecological malignant tumor surgery is as high as 40 to 50%. This incidence rate is astonishing. The patients we reached out had not heard about this disease before they developed symptoms of lymphedema. Therefore, they did not take necessary protective measures, which significantly increased the risk of lymphedema.
We estimate there are about 10 million people with lymphedema in the United States. So rather than prevent it, we find actually the number of patients is actually growing. And this is especially because people are surviving cancer with greater frequency, and as a result, there ends up being more lymphedema to deal with. So I wish I could say there was a comprehensive approach, but I fear most Americans have probably never even heard of lymphedema, and most are not being told about this prior to surgery. And I find the same thing very much throughout the world.
A recently published report about the survey report on Chinese female patients with lymphedema shows that breast and gynecologic tumor patients have little knowledge about the afterpain. 97.53% of patients knew nothing of lymphedema. Almost no healthcare providers had offered such information before the patients developed symptoms of lymphedema.
The hospital where my mother had her operation in Beijing is one of the best gynecological tumors in Beijing. So we can imagine how women in rural, non-developed areas in China would face the trauma of lymphedema. To further investigate the social problem, I surveyed 2 WeChat groups of lymphedema patients a few months ago. My survey focuses on 2 perspectives. First, the quality of life of patients with lymphedema, including the financial burden caused and the impact of the lymphedema on daily work. Second, the patient's awareness of lymphedema, prevention knowledge, medical institution instructions, and education of lymphedema prevention to patients. So far, more than 200 female lymphedema patients from 30 provinces and autonomous regions in mainland China have filled in the questionnaire. The data revealed a frustrating truth. Most patients received zero knowledge before lymphedema symptoms in all provinces.
Then we have to ask, what causes lymphedema to become an unguarded disease in China?
Lymphedema, this complication, was indeed ignored in the past. Many patients develop lymphedema after medical treatment. She would feel that her cancer has been cured, so the lymphedema symptoms are not very important. A lot of doctors thought the same. Many patients gradually feel their bodies become heavy, even difficult to walk or work. This certainly will lower their life quality. But the patient wouldn't seek medical treatments. Now, with the tumor treatment becoming more advanced, people realize that although many patients survived, lymphedema may reduce their quality of life. A considerable number of people need treatment and care urgently.
There are 1 million medical institutions in China, with over 99% primary-level medical and health institutions in economically underdeveloped areas. Larger hospitals prioritize the survival rate of tumor treatment while ignoring patients' quality of life. Less than 100 medical institutions in China carry out lymphedema diagnosis and treatment, not to mention lymphedema prevention. Moreover, hundreds of thousands of new lymphedema patients require proper diagnosis and treatment, challenging the already scarce medical resources.
I realized that this is a severe social problem. Our healthcare system is overburdened and fragmented with unbalanced resources. The system has little incentive to fix its flaws, perpetrating apparent loopholes. Such blind spots in the medical system could cause significant damage to patients, families, and society. I want to change the status quo. I want to help these patients, most of whom are mothers, the spiritual support of their children and families. I believe I'm saving a family while helping a patient, and I wish to help more people avoid this nightmare that my mom went through in the past.
While having bandages on their limbs, lymphedema patients face a life of bondage, and every patient longs to break free. But as for such an enormous, complicated medical system, these changes are more likely uphill battles.
However, in the face of a large and established medical system, individuals could do too little, which is why we can barely hear from the 20 million lymphedema patients in China. I decided to try to break the ice on lymphedema prevention through public welfare. Therefore, in July 2021, I launched the Lymphedema Care Action, which is the first public welfare project for lymphedema in China.
When lymphedema is a non-intended consequence of cancer treatment, a social innovation around lymphedema is well advised to think in a holistic way about the health system. And thinking holistically would require asking questions such as what is the level of general awareness and understanding of the problematique of lymphedema, who might be the actors required to make progress on the issue, take it more seriously and come up with a more systematic approach to helping and supporting patients. And that would require thinking about who might these actors be. Should they come from the private sector, for example, around data management and diagnostics? Should they come from the health system itself in the form of hospitals, healthcare providers, healthcare workers, but also which actors would be required from the public sector? And therefore, a social innovator around lymphedema would probably need to be an ecosystem builder, bringing together the important constituents that will define a proper solution and an effective solution around lymphedema.
As a China saying goes, accumulated problems cannot be easily reversed. In the face of a complex and interlocking medical system, there is huge resistance to change, even a little. It's not easy to find the key to solving the problem.
The biggest challenge I encountered was people's ignorance of lymphedema. I contacted more than 12 foundations to introduce my project and ideas, but they all rejected me. Fortunately, I finally found the Chinese Red Cross Foundation, which is the only foundation who are interested in looking at my project proposal. 2 months later, they agreed to cooperate. So we'll now raise money through Tencent Public Welfare Platform, which is China's large public welfare platform. I achieved unexpected great results. More than 2,100 people participated in the donation process, all of whom decided to support this project after reading our introduction about lymphedema. I'm so thrilled because so many people have shown such support, and every single donor has started to pay attention to lymphedema because of our program. Many have warned their family and friends of the importance of lymphedema prevention. We have completed China's first lymphedema protection menu for women after malignant tumor. So far, we have distributed 10,000 protection menus to women after tumor surgery in more than 50 hospitals across the country. And more than half of them are in China's economically underdeveloped western regions.
Lymphedema is such a disease that it cannot be cured once it occurs. The patients can only rely on special protective equipment for life to prevent the development and deterioration of the disease. Therefore, we must inform the patients of the risk and preventative measures of lymphedema before the operation to minimize the risk of lymphedema. Strengthening the publicity and education of lymphedema prevention knowledge is of great significance to reduce the incidence rate, improve patients' quality of life, and reduce the family and socioeconomic burden.
I think one of the biggest difficulties facing us right now are the lack of treatments. Right now, there is not a single drug on the market available to treat lymphedema. So most people feel they are living with an incurable disease. Since doctors don't know how to treat it, they tend not to take the disease very seriously. So we need to better understand the lymphatic system. We need more research. We need more education. And we need the psychosocial support for patients who feel alone and abandoned.
The government is undoubtedly the most vital source in solving medical and social problems like lymphedema.
I have also written a report on the current situation faced by women with lymphedema and submitted it to the government health authorities and medical associations in the hope that they will take the situation into account when revising medical policies and guidelines. My goal is to make the Chinese medical system extend to include lymphedema patients and evaluate every patient with breast cancer, gynecological tumor, and other high-risk patients with lymphedema before surgery. Patients after surgery should receive information on lymphedema prevention from the hospital to minimize their chance of developing the disease. In addition, I hope national medical insurance could cover the cost of lymphedema patients' lifelong use of special devices, especially for low-income patients.
And I think what is potentially unique about the Chinese health system is that it has the capacity to make decisions much faster and at a much higher scale than most other health systems in the world. At least that is how I perceive the Chinese health system. And therefore, given that China has a frontier role in frontier technologies such as robotics and AI, I think there will also be an important opportunity for China to showcase to the world through its social innovation in health what these new technologies can do for patients, but also what the limits might be. So I see an important role for China in social innovation to be a showcase for the rest of the world, to show new possibilities at a dramatic scale.
My public welfare project has been recognized and supported by more and more people. Every hospital and individual patient that receive the protection menus in the handbook support this practice. Some hospitals are beginning to train their staff and incorporate lymphedema prevention into their clinical workflows.
The prevention of lymphedema is a complex systemic project which requires the attention of government sections and the awareness of the whole society. It also requires the efforts of every concerned party in the medical system to change the current situation.
Approaching the U.S. government, what is really key is that the interest government takes is determined by the level of public advocacy for that issue. So First Learn needs to educate people about the disease. And we have chapters around the world so people with lymphedema can meet, share stories, learn about treatments, and feel support. So we do go to Washington, D.C. We lobby our politicians and go into every one of their offices. We make up our list of demands for research and to find new treatments and cures. And we also educate the Centers of Disease Control. And now they just gave a $1 million 3-year grant to learn to do a national lymphedema awareness campaign.
In 2018, the Lymphatic Education and Research Network wrote the first law in New York State requiring all hospitals to provide lymphedema information kits to all high-risk patients. It is the first time that lymphedema prevention has been promoted in the legal form.
The success I have gained through the form of public welfare was just a small step. Making the project sustainable is the problem we are still facing, and we seek social innovation opportunities for more institutions and enterprises to join and to form a virtuous circle of the projects.
Your program of cooperating with the Chinese Red Cross Foundation, designing and printing 10,000 copies of the first lymphedema protection manual in China and distributing these in hospitals across the country is the kind of action that changed the world. It is a real tribute to your mother and all those living with lymphedema in China, and it's also an inspiration to everyone around the world. You told me that you thought it is meaningful to use your own power to fix a social blank spot, and this is what makes change. It takes one person, and Aurora, I could not applaud you more for being an example worldwide of what one individual could do to change this. So we need to bring that community together to use their voice to create change. And you are awakening people. And this is where it all begins. This is where people see possibility. This is where they find hope. And once people have hope, they find their heart to fight for a better life for themselves and others like them who are suffering.
And being an ecosystem builder unfortunately requires the social innovator to be very patient, to sit down with many constituencies. So in the end, for your answer, there is no template here. That's why we call it social innovation. But I think patience and the idea of holistic thinking and ecosystem building would be a very good general approach toward thinking about the sustainability of the lymphedema project.
To solve the lymphedema problems in China, we face the challenges of building a network, learning the advanced experiences from other countries, and integrating all possible resources. We have seen the power of philanthropy and innovation in driving social changes. We determine to make greater changes in the future.